Some betrayals are whispers, quiet cracks in the foundation of a marriage. But for Madeline Dalton, betrayal was the deafening slam of a car door and the sting of cold asphalt against her skin. On a desolate, rain-slicked highway, her husband Gregory left her for dead, casting her aside like trash on his climb to the top. He thought he was getting rid of a liability. He had no idea he had just thrown away the key to his entire world, because the headlights that pierced the darkness that night didn't belong to a stranger. They belonged to the one man Gregory never knew existed. Madeline's brother, a man with a $10 billion empire and an ice-cold thirst for vengeance. The rain fell in relentless, slanting sheets, blurring the world outside the heated cocoon of the Lexus into a watercolor nightmare. Each swish of the windshield wipers seemed to mock Madeline, counting down the seconds of the most excruciating argument of her 5-year marriage. "I don't understand why you can't just be supportive." "Madeline, Gregory, Dalton," hissed his knuckles white on the leather-wrapped steering wheel. His voice, usually so smooth and charming in public, was now a low, venomous thing meant only for her. "This is the Westgate Charity Gala. Everyone who matters will be there. This is the night that secures my promotion to vice president." Madeline flinched, pulling her thin shawl tighter around her shoulders. The gown she wore, a simple but elegant navy silk dress she had bought from a consignment shop, suddenly felt cheap and inadequate under his withering gaze. "I am being supportive, Gregory. I just asked why you told Mr. Henderson that my family had a summer home in the Hamptons. We've never discussed that. My family. Your family is a non-topic." He cut her off, his jaw tight. "They're nobodies from a small town in Oregon, and frankly, it's embarrassing. I'm trying to build a life for us. A real life, not some pathetic paint-by-numbers existence you seem content with. The Henderson summer in the Hamptons. Now so do we. It's called networking. It's called creating an image." The lie stung worse than the insult. It wasn't just a lie. It was an erasure of her past, of who she was. For 5 years, she had believed Gregory loved her, the quiet artist who ran a small but respected gallery downtown. She had deliberately kept the true scale of her family's wealth a secret, wanting to be loved for herself, not for the Beaumont fortune. Her estrangement from her older brother Nicholas, after a bitter fight over her decision to marry Gregory, had made the separation complete. She lived on her gallery's modest income and the salary Gregory earned as a senior analyst at a prestigious investment firm. She had thought they were building a life together on their own terms. Now she saw it was all a performance, and she was just a prop. He was trying to upgrade. "But it's not real." "Gregory," she whispered, her voice trembling. "My art sales from the gallery last month. You told your friends it was your stock market genius paying for the down payment on this car. That money was for the gallery's rent." He laughed, a sharp, ugly sound that had no humor in it. "Oh, grow up, Maddie. Do you think anyone at my level cares about your little finger-painting hobby? I gave you a better story. I made you sound impressive. You should be thanking me." Tears welled in her eyes, hot and shameful. "You're ashamed of me." It wasn't a question. Gregory's eyes, cold and dark, flicked from the road to her. The manufactured charm was gone, replaced by a chilling frankness. "I'm ashamed of what you represent. Potential. Wasted. I need a partner, not a project. Someone who elevates me. Someone like Jenna Adler." The name hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Jenna Adler. The daughter of a real estate tycoon. A woman who dripped diamonds and social connections. A woman Gregory had been spending far too much time with under the guise of client development. Madeline's heart fractured. Jenna. She understands what it takes, Gregory said, his voice now eerily calm. Her father is on the board of 3 major corporations. When I walk into a room with her doors open, when I walk in with you, I have to explain why my wife is wearing a second-hand dress. The car screeched to a halt, the tires protesting against the wet pavement. They were on a dark, 2-lane stretch of road, miles from the city, surrounded by dense, dripping woods. There were no streetlights, no other cars, just the oppressive darkness and the drumming of the rain. "What are you doing?" Madeline asked, a knot of pure fear tightening in her stomach. Gregory turned to her, his face a mask of cold fury. "I'm cutting my losses. I can't walk into that gala with you, with your sad eyes and your cheap dress. You'll ruin everything I've worked for." "Gregory, please don't do this." Panic clawed at her throat. "It's miles back to town. It's raining. My phone. The battery is dead." "Then you'd better start walking," he said, his voice devoid of any emotion. He reached across her, his arm brushing against her contemptuously, and shoved the passenger door open. The roar of the rain and the rush of cold, damp air flooded the car. "Get out, Madeline." She stared at him, utterly stunned. This couldn't be happening. This was Gregory, her husband. The man she had loved, the man she had defied her own family for. "Gregory, no," she cried, grabbing his arm. He ripped his arm away with a violent shrug. "Get out!" he roared, his face contorted in a snarl she had never seen before. He unbuckled her seatbelt with a vicious tug and shoved her shoulder. Madeline stumbled out of the car, her heels sinking into the soft, muddy shoulder of the road. She was a splash of navy silk against the inky blackness. Before she could even process what was happening, Gregory leaned over his face, illuminated for a final cruel moment by the interior light. "Don't call me. Don't come to the apartment. As of tonight, we are done," he spat. Then he slammed the door shut. The Lexus, the car her aunt had paid for, accelerated away, its red taillights shrinking into the distance like a pair of malevolent eyes. They disappeared around a bend, plunging her into absolute darkness, and a silence broken only by the merciless pounding of the rain. She was alone, abandoned, and utterly broken on the side of a forgotten road. The cold seeped into Madeline's bones, first a deep, invasive chill that seemed to emanate from the muddy ground itself. Rain plastered her hair to her face and her thin dress to her body, offering no protection against the elements. Each passing minute felt like an hour. The darkness was absolute, a living entity that pressed in from all sides, the woods flanking the road, whispering with unseen life. Her mind reeled a chaotic slideshow of Gregory's face, the charming smile he gave her at their wedding, the dismissive sneer from moments ago, the final chilling emptiness in his eyes. He didn't just leave her, he discarded her. He had erased 5 years of her life with the slam of a door. Humiliation burned hotter than the cold. Despair was a lead weight in her chest. She tried to walk, but her heels, meant for a polished ballroom floor, sank into the mud, with every step twisting her ankles. After a few agonizing yards, she gave up, kicking them off, and feeling the sharp gravel of the roadside dig into the soles of her feet. Every shadow seemed to move. Every rustle of leaves was a threat. A pair of headlights cut through the distant rain. Hope surged through her, so powerful it almost buckled her knees. A car. Someone would help. She stumbled toward the edge of the pavement, waving her arm frantically, a pathetic, drenched figure in the night. The car slowed as it approached. It was not a practical sedan or a rugged truck. It was a long, impossibly sleek vehicle, its shape exuding a quiet power that seemed to absorb the sound of the rain. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, its silver paint glowing like liquid moonlight in the high beams. It purred to a stop directly beside her. Madeline's relief was tinged with apprehension. Who would be driving a car like this on a back road at this time of night? The tinted rear window glided down with a silent electric hum. Her breath caught in her throat. The man in the back seat was not a stranger. His face was one she knew better than her own, though she hadn't seen it in person for 5 long years. It was older, sharper, the lines around his eyes etched with the weight of immense responsibility. But it was unmistakably him. The same piercing blue eyes that could be warm as a summer sky or as cold as glacial ice. The same dark hair now, with a few distinguished flecks of silver at the temples. Nicholas. She breathed the name a ghost on her lips. Nicholas Beaumont. Her brother looked at her. His gaze swept over her shivering frame, her ruined dress, her bare, bleeding feet, and the despair etched on her face. The calm, controlled expression he wore like a piece of bespoke armor, shattered, replaced by a storm of fury so intense it seemed to suck the air from around them. "Get in the car, Maddie," he said. His voice was dangerously quiet, a low rumble that promised devastation. It wasn't a request. The driver's door opened, and a man in a crisp suit, his expression impassive, swiftly opened the rear door for her. Madeline numbly slid onto the plush leather seat, which felt warmer and softer than anything she had ever touched. The door closed with a heavy, satisfying thud, sealing them in a world of absolute silence and understated luxury. The rain was now just a silent film playing on the windows. Nicholas immediately shed his tailored suit jacket and wrapped it around her trembling shoulders. It smelled of cedar leather and something uniquely him, a scent of power and home that she hadn't realized she had missed so desperately. He pressed a button on the console, and a panel slid open to reveal a small, stocked bar. He poured a measure of amber liquid into a crystal glass and pressed it into her hands. "Brandy. Drink it." She did as she was told, the fiery liquid chasing away some of the deep internal chill. The tears she had been holding back finally came silent, at first then racking her body in great, shuddering sobs. Nicholas didn't say anything. He just pulled her close, letting her cry into the fine fabric of his shirt. He held her with a strength that was both fierce and gentle, a protective embrace that she hadn't felt since she was a girl who believed her big brother could slay any dragon. After a long time, her sobs subsided into hiccuping breaths. He gently pushed her back, his eyes searching her face. "Tell me everything," he said, his voice still low, but now laced with a raw, protective anger. "Tell me his name." Gregory Dalton," she stammered. A flicker of recognition, and then pure contempt crossed Nicholas's face. The mid-level analyst at Sterling Whitfield. The one with the inflated ego and the less-than-stellar performance reviews. Madeline stared at him bewildered. You know who he is?" "I know everything about him," Nicholas replied, his tone glacial. "I've had a discreet security detail keeping an eye on you since the day you married him. Maddie. I never trusted him. I told you he was a parasite looking for a host. I was waiting for you to see it too. I never imagined he was capable of this." His hands clenched into fists on his knees. "Where was he taking you?" "The Westgate Charity Gala," she whispered. "He said He said I was an embarrassment, that he couldn't be seen with me. Nicholas's jaw tightened until a muscle jumped. He picked up the sleek integrated car phone. "Peterson," he said, his voice sharp and clear. "Change of plans. We're not going to the airport. We're going to the penthouse, and I want you to initiate the Dalton Protocol, full spectrum. I want his professional, financial, and social life dismantled by sunrise. I want him to wake up tomorrow morning having lost everything he thinks he owns, and I want it to be surgical." There was a pause, and then a calm, professional voice replied from the other end. "Consider it done, Mr. Beaumont." Nicholas ended the call and turned back to Madeleine. The fury in his eyes was now a terrifyingly cold, focused light. "He threw you out of his car," Nicholas said, as if tasting the words and finding them poison. "Tonight, Maddie, we're going to throw him out of his entire life." For the first time that night, a flicker of something other than pain ignited within Madeleine. It was a tiny, dangerous spark. In the silent, opulent sanctuary of her brother's car, surrounded by the power she had run from for so long, she finally understood. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a declaration of war. The Rolls-Royce glided through the city, a silent predator in the rain-slicked streets. They didn't drive to the modest two-bedroom apartment Madeleine shared with Gregory, a place she now realized was a stage for a life that was never real. They ascended, climbing higher and higher into the heart of the city, until they reached the private secured entrance of the Beaumont Tower, the glittering centerpiece of Nicholas's global real estate empire. The penthouse was less a home and more a kingdom in the sky. Spanning 3 floors, its floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the sprawling city lights below a universe of twinkling stars that Nicholas commanded. The decor was minimalist, but exquisitely expensive. Original abstract paintings on the walls, sculptures that belonged in museums and furniture that was both art and function. The sheer scale of it was overwhelming, a stark, brutal contrast to the life Madeleine had chosen. A quiet, efficient woman in a grey uniform, the housekeeper she presumed met them at the door, taking Nicholas's jacket without a word and handing Madeleine a plush cashmere robe. She was guided to a sprawling guest suite that was larger than her entire apartment. The bathroom was a marble sanctuary with a rainfall shower and a closet filled with a curated selection of new clothes in her size. As the hot water washed away the grime and the cold of the roadside, it felt like she was shedding her old life. The naive, forgiving woman who had made excuses for Gregory's ambition, who had believed his lies, was being scrubbed away. Stepping out of the shower and wrapping herself in the impossibly soft robe, she looked at her reflection. Her eyes were red-rimmed and puffy, but beneath the pain there was a new hardness, a glint of steel she hadn't seen before. It was the Beaumont steel. When she emerged, Nicholas was waiting for her in the vast living area. A fire crackled in a sleek, modern fireplace. On the table before him was a spread of food, soup, sandwiches, and hot tea. Beside him sat a severe-looking man in his late 50s with thinning grey hair and wire-rimmed glasses. This was Mr. Peterson, the voice from the phone, Nicholas's chief counsel and right-hand man. "Eat first," Maddie Nicholas said, his tone gentle but firm. She did, surprised by her own hunger. As she ate, Nicholas and Peterson spoke in low, clipped tones, referencing documents on a tablet Peterson held. Words like asset forfeiture, forensic accounting, and character defamation clause floated in the air. It was the language of destruction, wielded with calm corporate precision. When she finished, Nicholas pushed a cup of tea toward her. Now he set his focus entirely on her. "I need you to tell us everything. Every condescending comment, every financial loan, He never paid back every time he used your gallery's success to bolster his own image. Don't spare a single detail. Every insult is a nail for his coffin." And so the dam broke. Madeline talked for over an hour, the words pouring out of her. She spoke of how Gregory had convinced her to co-sign for the Lexus, putting only his name on the title, but using a significant sum from her gallery's account for the down payment. She recounted how he'd borrowed thousands from her over the years for can't-miss investments that never seemed to materialize. She described how he belittled her art and her business in private, only to brag about his wife, the successful gallery owner, to his superiors when it suited him. She even remembered the small, cruel cuts his insistence on controlling their joint bank account, his mockery of her friends, his subtle isolation of her from anyone who wasn't part of his world. Mr. Peterson typed silently on his tablet, his expression unchanging, but his fingers flying across the screen. Each memory Madeline provided was another piece of ammunition. "He told Mr. Henderson you had a summer home in the Hamptons," Peterson stated, looking up. "Yes," Madeline confirmed, her voice thick with shame. "Excellent," Peterson said, with the grim satisfaction of a master strategist. "That constitutes fraudulent representation to a superior for personal gain. We can use that." Nicholas listened, his face a granite mask, but his eyes burned with a cold fire. When she was finished, a heavy silence filled the room. "The man didn't marry a wife," Nicholas finally said, his voice a low growl. "He acquired an asset he thought was undervalued, an unsecured long-term line of credit with no interest." He looked at Madeline, his expression softening with a deep, aching regret. "I am so sorry, Maddie. I'm sorry I didn't intervene sooner. I honored your wish for independence, but I should have protected you from him. I'm the one who chose him," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm the one who pushed you away, because you told me the truth, and I didn't want to hear it." "That ends now," Nicholas stated. He stood and paced before the vast window, a caged tiger silhouetted against the glittering city. "Peterson, what's the status?" Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses. "Phase 1 is complete. Our forensic accounting team has already isolated all funds originating from Ms. Beaumont's personal and business accounts within their joint finances. We've prepared an emergency injunction to be filed at 8 a.m. to freeze all assets, citing financial abuse and misappropriation. The Lexus, which was purchased with a 70% down payment from your sister's account, will be repossessed by 9 a.m. He continued, his voice a monotone litany of ruin. "Phase 2 is in motion. I've spoken with a contact on the board of Sterling Whitfield. An anonymous, highly detailed tip regarding Gregory Dalton's financial misrepresentations and potential expense fraud will be in the CEO's inbox by 6 a.m. We are cross-referencing the investments he borrowed money for with his known associates. It appears he was using your sister's money to fund a lifestyle to impress Miss Jenna Adler." Madeline felt a sharp pang at the name. Nicholas saw it. Jenna Adler's father, Robert Adler, values his family's reputation above all else. He said, a cruel smile touching his lips for the first time. He is notoriously intolerant of scandal. He's about to receive a portfolio on his daughter's new suitor. It will detail Gregory's actual net worth, which is deeply in the negative, his history of financial deception, and a high-resolution photograph of the Lexus that left his wife stranded on a highway tonight. The photo was taken by your security detail. Maddie. Madeline's eyes widened. They had a picture. "The goal is not just to divorce him," Nicholas said, turning to face her fully. His eyes were locked on hers, challenging her, testing her. That's too simple. The goal is to make him an untouchable, a pariah, to strip him of the status he values more than human decency, to ensure that every door he tries to open is slammed shut in his face. But I won't do it without your full agreement. This will be public, and it will be brutal. Are you ready for that? The shivering, terrified woman from the side of the road was gone. In her place was a woman who had been betrayed, humiliated, and left for nothing. She looked at her brother, the most powerful man she knew, offering her not just shelter, but a sword. She thought of Gregory's smug face as he drove away, already dreaming of his life with Jenna Adler, a life built on her money and her pain. She lifted her chin. "Burn it all down," she said. Gregory Dalton woke up the next morning feeling like the king of the world. He stretched languidly in the king-sized bed, the sheets cool against his skin. The apartment felt wonderfully quiet, empty. There was no sign of Madeline, no trace of her cloying artistic clutter. He smirked. She had probably called one of her sad little friends and was crying on their shoulder. Good. Let her. She'd come crawling back in a day or two full of apologies, and he'd graciously allow her to return, but on his terms. More support, less questioning. He'd had a fantastic night after dropping her. He arrived at the gala solo, crafting a believable story about Madeline coming down with a sudden, terrible flu. The sympathy he received was intoxicating. He spent 2 hours attached to Jenna Adler's hip, charming her father and schmoozing with the Henderson brothers. The promotion wasn't just likely, it was a certainty. He felt the tectonic plates of his life shifting, moving him into the stratosphere where he belonged. He whistled as he showered, selecting his most expensive suit, a Tom Ford he'd bought, with the profits from one of Madeline's art sales. He chose a power tie and slipped on his Rolex. Looking in the mirror, he saw the man he was always meant to be. Powerful, successful, destined for greatness. He strode into his office at Sterling Whitfield at 8:15 a.m., greeting his subordinates with a magnanimous nod. He was ready for the congratulations, the pats on the back. Instead, he was met with strange, furtive glances. People fell silent as he approached. An odd tension coiled in the air. At 8:45 a.m., his assistant, a nervous young woman named Chloe, approached his desk. "Mr. Dalton, Mr. Henderson, would like to see you in the main conference room. Immediately." This was it. The promotion. He smoothed his tie, a confident smile spreading across his face, and walked toward the conference room. But the sight that greeted him was not a celebration. Seated at the long mahogany table were Robert Henderson, the firm's senior partner, the head of human resources, and 2 grim-faced men in dark suits from the legal department. There was no coffee, no pleasantries. "Gregory." "Sit down," Henderson said, his voice flat and cold. Gregory's smile faltered. He sat. Henderson slid a file across the table. "We received an interesting email this morning. It contained a detailed breakdown of your financials. It alleges, among other things, that you have systematically misrepresented your personal wealth to both clients and senior management." Gregory's blood ran cold. "That's absurd." "Slander. Who would? It also alleges the HR director cut in that you have been falsifying expense reports. Specifically, charging personal dinners gifts, and even a weekend trip to a Napa resort to your corporate account under the guise of client entertainment." She slid a stack of receipts and a highlighted credit card statement next to the file. "All of these charges seem to correlate with your time spent with Ms. Jenna Adler." Panic, slick and oily, began to rise in his throat. This was impossible. Who could know this? But the most troubling part. Gregory Henderson continued leaning forward. His eyes like chips of flint is the claim that your seed money for the Dalton Investment Fund you've been bragging about, the fund that has been the primary basis for your performance review, was not from your own savvy market plays, but was directly misappropriated from your wife's small business account. Money you have never paid back. Gregory's mind was a blank, roaring void. He couldn't breathe. My wife, she would never. This is a misunderstanding. Is it? Henderson asked coldly. Because we also received this. He turned a tablet around to face Gregory. On the screen was a crystal-clear high-resolution photograph. It showed the side of a rain-swept highway. In the distance, the red taillights of his Lexus were visible, and in the foreground, illuminated by the headlights of another car, was Madeline, soaked, shivering, and utterly abandoned. The timestamp in the corner read 10:17 p.m. The air left Gregory's lungs in a whoosh. He felt like he had been punched in the gut. Sterling Whitfield has a zero-tolerance policy for fraud, the HR director said, her voice clinical. And while your personal life is your own, leaving your wife stranded on a highway miles from home does not align with the character we expect from our vice presidents. Your employment is terminated effective immediately. Security will escort you to your desk to collect your personal belongings. Then they will escort you out of the building. It was a nightmare, a surreal, waking nightmare. He was marched through the office, the silent, staring eyes of his colleagues burning into his back. He grabbed a few items from his desk, a photo of him and Jenna at a polo match, a stupid little framed quote about success, and was unceremoniously walked to the front door, his security pass deactivated before he was even on the pavement. He stood on the sidewalk in his $1,000 suit, a cardboard box in his hands, dazed. His phone rang. It was Jenna. Relief washed over him. She would fix this. Her father would call Henderson and smooth it all over. Jenna. Thank God, he said, his voice desperate. You won't believe what just happened. Oh, I think I will. Her voice was dripping with ice. I just got off the phone with my father. He received a little care package this morning, Gregory. All about you. The fake job prospects, the fake money. The fact you're married to some poor little artist you left on the side of the road. Jenna, it's not what it looks like. Don't you dare call me again, she snarled. My father said, if I ever speak to you again, he'll cut me off. You are a disgusting social climbing fraud, Gregory. You are poison. Lose my number. The line went dead. Stunned, he fumbled with his phone, trying to access his online banking app to see how much money he had left. Access denied. He tried again. Access denied. Your accounts have been frozen by a court order. A court order? On what grounds? He frantically tried to call Madeline. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. He looked down at his Rolex. The time seemed to mock him. An hour ago he was on top of the world. Now he had no job, no girlfriend, and no money. As he stood there reeling, a tow truck pulled up to the curb. The driver got out and began hooking up the front of his Lexus. Hey! What are you doing? Gregory shouted, running toward the car. That's my car. The driver barely glanced at him. Not according to this repossession order, buddy. Says it was purchased with stolen funds. Now step back before you get hurt. Gregory watched, helpless and impotent, as the symbol of his success, the machine he had been so proud of, was hoisted into the air and driven away. It was only 9:30 in the morning, and his entire life had been systematically and brutally erased. He didn't know how. He didn't know who. All he knew was that he had made a terrible, terrible mistake. The next 48 hours were a free fall into a hell of his own making. When Gregory finally managed to get a taxi back to his apartment, a humiliating experience that involved him pleading with the driver to let him run upstairs to get cash he didn't have, he found his key no longer worked. The lock had been changed. A crisp white envelope was taped to the door. His hands trembled as he tore it open. It was a formal notice of eviction for non-payment of rent, along with a restraining order filed by Madeline Dalton, citing domestic abuse and abandonment. He was legally barred from entering his own home. All his possessions, his clothes, his electronics, his life were trapped inside. He slumped against the wall in the hallway, the full weight of his predicament crushing him. He had nothing. The suit on his back and the useless box of office trinkets were his only worldly possessions. His credit cards were all declined. His name, he would soon discover, was mud. News of his spectacular firing for gross misconduct had already ripped through the tight-knit financial community. No firm would touch him. Desperation gnawed at him. He checked into a grimy motel on the outskirts of the city that accepted cash he'd managed to get by pawning his Rolex for a fraction of its worth. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and despair. It was there, flicking through the channels on a flickering television, that he saw the next phase of his destruction unfold. It was a segment on a popular city news channel in their lifestyle and arts section. The host was interviewing a radiant, confident woman in front of a stunningly minimalist painting. The woman was Madeline. But this was not the quiet, accommodating Madeline he knew. This woman was poised, articulate, and powerful. She was dressed in a chic, tailored pantsuit that probably cost more than his rent. The chyron at the bottom of the screen read Madeline Beaumont, the secret powerhouse behind Beaumont Galleries. Gregory's jaw dropped. But Beaumont, the host, was fawning over her. So Madeline, for years you've quietly run this incredibly influential gallery under your married name, Dalton. But now you're stepping into the spotlight, announcing a major expansion of Beaumont Galleries, with new locations opening in London and Paris. Tell us why the sudden change. Madeline smiled, a calm, measured expression that sent a shiver down Gregory's spine. I felt it was time to reclaim my own identity and step fully into my family's legacy. For a while I put my own ambitions on hold to support my husband's career. But I've recently come to understand that you cannot build a life with someone who sees you as a stepping stone instead of a partner. The host leaned in conspiratorially. There are rumors, of course, of a rather dramatic split. Can you comment? Madeline's gaze was directed straight at the camera, and Gregory felt as if she were looking right through the screen into his soul. I can only say that integrity and kindness are the cornerstones of both art and life, she said smoothly. When someone shows you they possess neither, you must remove them from your gallery and from your life. My focus now is on the future, on building something beautiful and lasting under the name I was born with Beaumont. The interview cut to a B-roll of the Beaumont Tower, then to a picture of a handsome, powerful-looking man. The host's voiceover explained, "Of course, Madeline isn't just an art world prodigy. She is also the younger sister of billionaire industrialist Nicholas Beaumont, who we're told is the primary investor in this global expansion." The television remote slipped from Gregory's numb fingers and clattered to the floor. Beaumont. Nicholas Beaumont, the titan of industry, a man whose net worth was a number with too many zeros to count. a ruthless private man, known for crushing his competition with brutal efficiency. Madeline's brother. It all clicked into place with the sickening finality of a guillotine. The speed, the precision, the absolute annihilation. This wasn't bad luck. It was a strategic, scorched earth campaign. The financial audit, the tip-off to Jenna's father, the frozen accounts, the repossessed car, the restraining order. It was all him. Nicholas Beaumont was dismantling his life, piece by piece, with the casual indifference of a god flicking an ant off a table. He had thrown Madeline Beaumont, sister of a billionaire, out of his car. He hadn't just made a mistake, he had committed career and social suicide. The Hamptons lie suddenly seemed like a pathetic cosmic joke. He had been trying to fake a connection to a world that Madeline actually owned. A new kind of terror, cold and absolute, gripped him. This wasn't just about losing his job or his girlfriend. This was about being erased. He remembered the look in Nicholas Beaumont's eyes from photos, a look of utter uncompromising power. And he had just earned that man's full, undivided attention. He grabbed his cheap motel room key and ran out into the night. He had to find her. He had to apologize. He had to beg. It was no longer about getting his life back. It was about simple survival. He had to convince her to call off her monster of a brother before there was nothing left of him to save. It took Gregory 2 days of frantic, desperate searching to find her. She wasn't at their old apartment, and security at the Beaumont Tower laughed in his face when he tried to get to the penthouse. He was a ghost in a city that no longer acknowledged his existence. His suit was wrinkled. His face was covered in a desperate stubble, and the confident swagger he once possessed had been replaced by the haunted, twitchy energy of a cornered animal. Finally, he had a stroke of luck, or what he perceived as luck. A small article in a society blog mentioned Madeline Beaumont attending the reopening of a renovated wing at the city's main art museum. He spent his last $20 on a taxi to get there, looking pathetic and out of place as he tried to slip past the elegant black-tie crowd. He was stopped at the door by security. "Invitation only, sir. I know her, Madeline Beaumont. I'm her husband," he pleaded, his voice cracking. The security guard gave him a look of pure pity and contempt. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." But through the glass doors he saw her. She was standing in the center of a rotunda, bathed in soft light, holding a glass of champagne. She was laughing, surrounded by a circle of distinguished-looking people who were hanging on her every word. She looked regal, untouchable. This wasn't the woman he had abandoned. This was a queen in her court. Seeing her so radiant, so powerful while he was reduced to this pathetic shell ignited a fresh wave of fury and self-pity. He shoved past the guard, shouting her name. "Madeline!" Heads turned. The civilized chatter died. 100 pairs of eyes focused on him, the disheveled madman who had just crashed their exclusive party. Madeline's smile froze. Her eyes met his across the polished marble floor. For a moment he saw a flicker of the old Madeline, a hint of shock and maybe even fear. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a calm, icy composure. 2 large security guards were on him immediately, grabbing his arms in a bruising grip. But Nicholas Beaumont, who had been standing just at the edge of the circle, held up a single hand. "It's all right," he said, his voice quiet, but carrying an authority that made the guards pause. "Let him speak." He and Madeline walked toward Gregory, stopping a safe 10 feet away. They stood, side by side, a united front of wealth and power. "Madeline, Maddie, please!" Gregory begged, his voice raw. The guards still held him a necessary humiliation. "You have to listen to me. This has to stop. Your brother, he's ruined me. I've lost everything. My job, my car, my home, everything." Madeline's expression was unreadable. "You seem to be confusing cause and effect, Gregory. My brother didn't ruin you. You did. You built a life on a foundation of lies, and all he did was kick out the support beams. It was a mistake," he cried, his voice echoing in the now silent hall. "I was stressed. I wasn't thinking I love you, Maddie. I've always loved you. We can fix this. Just call him off." A low, humorless chuckle came from Nicholas. "Love," he said, stepping forward slightly. "Let me tell you what you love, Mr. Dalton. You love the idea of a wife who is pretty and quiet. You love the idea of a wife who funds your ambition without questioning it. You love the idea of a wife as an accessory. You don't love her. You tolerated her. And when you thought you had a chance to trade up for a shinier accessory, you threw her away in the dark on the side of a road like a piece of garbage." Every word was a perfectly aimed blow. Gregory flinched. "This isn't fair," he whimpered, turning his desperate gaze back to Madeline. 5 years, Maddie. We had 5 years together. Doesn't that mean anything?" And then Madeline took the final step forward, her eyes clear and unwavering. The cold fury he had seen in her brother's eyes was now reflected in hers, refined into something sharper, more personal. "It meant everything to me, Gregory. It meant trust. It meant partnership. It meant believing we were a team," she said, her voice steady and clear, each word cutting through the silence. "But it never meant that to you. You asked for my support, and I gave it. You asked for my money, and I gave it. You asked for my loyalty, and I gave it. And in return, you gave me contempt." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "You were right about one thing that night. You said you needed a partner who elevates you. You were just too stupid and arrogant to realize you already had one." She looked him up and down from his rumpled suit to his terrified eyes and delivered the final devastating verdict. "The difference between us," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper that was somehow more chilling than a shout, "is that when I was left with nothing on the side of that road, my family came for me. When you are left with nothing which is right, now you will see that no one is coming for you. You are completely and utterly alone." With that, she turned her back on him. It was a gesture of absolute finality. "Get him out of my sight," Nicholas said quietly to the guards. As they dragged him away, kicking and pleading, Gregory watched Madeline's back. She never looked back. Not once. She simply took her brother's arm, and together they walked back into the light, leaving him behind in the darkness for good. 3 months later, the city breathed a different air. Or perhaps it was simply Madeline who had learned to breathe again. The name Dalton felt like a borrowed coat she had finally returned ill-fitting and foreign. In its place, Madeline Beaumont had settled back into her soul, not just as a name, but as an identity she was forging anew, tempered by fire and stronger for it. Her new office was a testament to this transformation. Perched high in a downtown arts district building, its walls were glass flooding the space with the clean, impartial light of a late autumn afternoon. Architectural blueprints for the new Beaumont Gallery's flagship in Paris were spread across a vast oak table, the scent of fresh ink and possibility mingling in the air. This was her domain, a world she was creating, a stark contrast to the life she had lived, which had been curated and controlled by Gregory's fragile ego. Here her vision was the guiding principle. Her voice was the one that mattered. The legal proceedings had been a blur of cold efficiency, orchestrated by Mr. Peterson with the precision of a military campaign. The divorce was finalized on grounds of extreme cruelty and financial malfeasance. Madeline remembered the final day in court, a sterile room that felt worlds away from the emotional carnage of her marriage. Gregory had been there, a ghost of the man she knew. He sat slumped in his chair, represented by a weary public defender, his expensive suit replaced by a cheap off-the-rack garment that hung loosely on his diminished frame. He looked up at her once across the courtroom, his eyes a hollow pit of desperation and disbelief. He had expected a fight, perhaps, or tears. He found neither. Madeline met his gaze with a calm, steady indifference that was more damning than any accusation. When the gavel fell, the sound wasn't one of victory, but simply of a door closing quietly and forever. He received nothing. The court affirmed that every significant asset had been built on the foundation of her resources and was rightfully hers. She had sold the apartment the following week, not out of spite, but out of a deep-seated need to cleanse. She poured that capital, along with the formidable investment from Nicholas, into her true purpose. Beaumont Galleries was no longer a quiet passion project, but a burgeoning force in the international art world. Her innate eye for undiscovered talent, once a little hobby in Gregory's dismissive words, was now celebrated in art journals as visionary. She wasn't just curating collections. She was building careers, giving brilliant artists the platform and respect she herself had been denied for so long. Her relationship with Nicholas had been the silent, steady anchor in this whirlwind of change. The 5 years of strained silence had evaporated, replaced by an easy, profound understanding. There were no recriminations, no patronizing and I-told-you-sos. One evening, as they shared dinner on the terrace of his penthouse, he had looked out at the glittering city and spoken with a quiet regret. "I thought I was respecting your independence," he'd said, his voice low. "But I see now that I let my pride get in the way of protecting my little sister. I'm sorry, Maddie." She had simply reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "You were there when it mattered, Nick. You didn't just save me from a bad situation. You helped me find myself again." He had given her resources, yes, but more importantly, he had given her his unwavering belief, stepping back to let her lead a silent partner confident in her strength. A soft knock on her office door pulled her from her reverie. It was Mr. Peterson, his posture as impeccable as his suit, a leather-bound file held in one hand. "Ms. Beaumont, I hope I'm not disturbing you. I have a final update if you have a moment." "Of course, Mr. Peterson. Please come in," she said, gesturing to a chair. He remained standing, a deliberate choice that signaled the brevity of his report. "This is regarding the Gregory Dalton matter. I am preparing to close the file permanently, but I wanted to provide you with the final disposition." Madeline leaned back in her chair, her hands resting on the cool oak of the table. She felt a strange detachment, as if hearing about a character in a book she had finished long ago. "Is there a problem?" "Not at all. Just a matter of due diligence," he replied, his tone as dry as old paper. After the divorce and the severance of his professional contacts, Mr. Dalton was unable to secure employment within the financial sector, or indeed any professional sector in this city or any major metropolitan area. Our reputation management, shall we say, was quite thorough. A rare, fleeting glimmer of what might have been satisfaction touched Peterson's eyes before vanishing. He liquidated his few remaining personal effects, a watch, some cufflinks, and left the city 6 weeks ago. We maintained a low-level trace as per Mr. Beaumont's instructions, to ensure he would not attempt to contact you again. The trace has concluded. We located him in a small, unremarkable town in the Midwest." Peterson paused, allowing the silence to hang in the sunlit office. He opened the file, though he didn't need to consult it. The information was seared into his memory. He is currently employed as a night shift stocker at a large 24-hour retail superstore called Omnimart. The words landed not with a crash, but with the quiet finality of dust settling. Madeline closed her eyes for a moment, and an image formed with perfect clarity. She saw Gregory not as the handsome, charming man she had married, nor the cruel monster who had abandoned her, but as a complete stranger. She pictured him under the buzzing, unforgiving fluorescent lights of a vast, soulless store, the garish red polyester vest of his uniform, pulled over a faded t-shirt. She could almost smell the floor cleaner and stale popcorn. She saw his hands, once so quick to gesture expansively, while claiming her successes as his own, now methodically placing cans of soup onto a metal shelf in the dead of night. His world had shrunk from glittering galas and corner offices to a single repetitive aisle in the middle of nowhere. Anonymity was his prison. Irrelevance was his life sentence. She had expected to feel a surge of triumph, a hot, satisfying pulse of victory. She waited for it, searching within herself for that final sweet taste of revenge. But it wasn't there. All she felt was a profound and tranquil emptiness. His fate was a stone dropped into a deep well, and she could no longer even hear the splash. Her energy, her focus, her very spirit was now pointed forward, toward creation, growth and beauty. He was anchored to the consequences of his destruction, a ghost haunting the ruins of a life he had torched himself. The best revenge, she realized in that moment, wasn't his misery. It was his complete and total irrelevance to her happiness. "Thank you, Mr. Peterson," she said, opening her eyes. Her voice was steady, clear. "You can close the file." He gave a single, sharp nod. "Very good, Miss Beaumont." He turned and left her office, closing the door with a soft click, leaving her alone with her thoughts, and the city spread out before her. Madeline rose from the table and walked to the immense window. She looked down, not at the traffic or the people, but at the vast, intricate tapestry of the world she now inhabited. She remembered the suffocating darkness of that road, the feeling of the world shrinking to a single point of terror and despair. Gregory had thrown her from a moving car, believing he was ejecting a burden. He thought the fall would break her. But he had been wrong. It wasn't an ending. It had been a violent, brutal push from a nest she hadn't known she needed to leave. In the terrifying freefall, she had not crashed. She had been forced to unfurl wings she never knew she possessed and learn in the most brutal way possible how to fly. And from this height, the view was glorious. Madeline's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes hitting rock bottom is the only way to find the solid ground you need to rebuild. Gregory thought he was throwing away a weakness, but he was actually unleashing a strength he was too blind to see. It wasn't just about the money or the powerful brother. It was about a woman reclaiming her name, her power, and her worth. The ultimate revenge wasn't watching him fall. It was the triumph of her own rise. She didn't just get even. She got ahead, building an empire on the ashes of a life he tried to burn down. What did you think of Madeline's transformation and Gregory's ultimate fate? Was his downfall justified? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story of justice and empowerment resonated with you, please give this video a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, and make sure you subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories. Thank you for listening.